Welcome, Kathy, to Crew Conversations. I'm excited to have you on today and excited to conversate with you a little bit about a subject I know you and I are both passionate about, which is this ability to overcome inevitable adversity and how do we balance all of that when life happens, right?
Right.
And all the things that we're not planning on. Before we start getting into some of that, I would love to just kind of let you open up with a little bit of a brief intro about yourself and
Okay.
your background and anything you think is relevant.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me, Adam. I always enjoy opportunity to catch up with you and chat. So a little bit about myself. I am from a small town called Nahunta, Georgia. It's southeast Georgia, probably population of 10,000. And I am one of five. I am the baby girl. And I come from a very large family. My mom is the oldest of nine children. So I shared with you at the age of 8, I had 23 first cousins. So I didn't realize how much of a blessing that was until you grow up, leave home, and then realize, that having that type of community and that type of village really instilled in me, just who I am, right? And that those are things that money can't buy. Those are those tangible things that really ground you and root you. I went to an HBCU, Albany State University, got my degree in psychology. And actually, I was real passionate about that because I always found that people were very comfortable opening up to me about their life. And I was very comfortable and able to handle that. And so that was the path that I wanted to take until I did my internship. When I did the internship, I realized that my heart couldn't handle some of the things that I was presented with. And so I decided to pivot out of that very quickly and began to work for a competitor, Nova Information Systems, where I started, in retention, like literally saving accounts. And that was my first introduction into the financial technology sector, right? And worked my way into sales, realized that that's where the money was, in all honesty. So as a 22-year-old, I wanted to jump in and take on the world and moved over into cross sales and really realized that with my personality, I had a niche for that, right? And I had a coworker who left and went to First Data, who was number one in that industry. And I said, well, why would I not work for number one? So there were openings and I interviewed and I got on with First Data in 2000. So I've been with First Data, Fiserv, as everyone knows, we're Fiserv now, 23 years. Been with the company 23 years. And so in those 23 years, I have went from being a business consultant to a sales director to a VP of ops and now VP of sales. So I've had a thriving career here. I am very grateful for the opportunity to be able to lead a group of 6 sales directors and about 75 business consultants. It's very much of a passion of mine. I do it not for anything other than the gratification that comes with being able to lead people and see how this job has changed lives for the better. And then really being able to pour into individuals, mistakes I've made, help kind of guide them through a succession plan of how to make those stepping stones to get to the place where they want to be. So it has been a ride, but it's been a ride that I have enjoyed. I've learned from mistakes. That's the best teacher, right? And so that kind of gives a background of kind of a little bit about my background in terms of who I am and what I do.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. And the family dynamic, that many siblings, that many cousins, are y'all still close? I mean, did that stay close throughout your whole life so far?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the things that my grandmother in her lifetime, she was really big on Sunday meals and she had a very small home, right? I think that the term is a shotgun home, her and my grandfather, where you literally could open the front door and see the back door. But if you can only imagine that the kitchen was just full of love, and we grew up on organic food when organic food wasn't popular. And so we would go out in the garden and pull, a cabbage or greens or fresh tomatoes or cucumbers. So whatever we ate, it was literally farm to table. Our eggs were farm to table. And we used to do rock, paper, scissors, me and my cousins, to see who was going to go in and get the eggs because you had to bypass the rooster. And so just all of those things, really instilled what my grandmother and my grandfather instilled in us. It carried on for years. My mom and her siblings are still very close. My cousins and I still keep in contact. We've all kind of left off and took our journey through college or the military. I have a really big military family. And so, life happened and took us, some in Germany, some in Japan, kind of spread all over. But with social media, with technology, we've been able to reconnect. And I think the younger generation, we've started back up with family reunions. We understand that our moms and our dads are a little bit older and they don't have the energy to keep that up, but we've started that back. And that's very important to us because we would only get together when someone died. And that's not, that's really not the way you should reconnect. And so as we began to lose family members, we thought this is a perfect time for us to be able to reconnect. So we've held true to that. COVID kind of stirred that up, and I'm pretty sure it did for a lot of families, being, kind of isolated from your families and not being able to have that human touch. And so we reconnected, during social media platforms, Zoom, like so many families did. We wanted to make sure everyone was okay and check on each other's mental health. And we continue that. We continue to get on a phone call every Wednesday and connect. And so that's important to us. So yeah, you asked me the question, and I think that through life, you can get off a unbeaten path, and life happens, and you begin to realize what's important. And those things are important that you hold very close to you, and you make the best of them.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is really cool and inspiring. It feels like y'all could have a movie shot on your upbringing. That feels like movie material. Going out, 18, 20 some kids going out and farming their own food. And that's just, it's awesome. I'm envious. I'm envious. So that's really cool. So you gave some glimpses into your leadership style with your intro as well. And, the early days with the psychology interest, and it's interesting to see how you've finessed and pulled nuances from that. And clearly, or ultimately still doing a lot of that when you kind of talk about your why as far as what motivates you in leadership and in your jobs today, and the impact that it has on human beings. You're kind of getting to do what you initially set out to do, but you just figured out to do it through a channel that feels a little bit better for you, right? Like you said. And, what else about just leadership in general, when you think about, this ability to lead people and help them be their best selves and really have that positive impact on them, and what do you think is the best way to do that? How do you have the most profound impact? How do you become one of the leaders that people look back upon and say, that was one of the best leaders I ever had, and they really helped me in so many ways? What is there anything that's kind of you feel is the secret sauce to that?
Yeah, good question. I think the secret sauce for me, because it's different for everyone, is just transparency. I'm really transparent in some of the valleys that I have incurred in life and some of the peaks that I have incurred. And so I think through that transparency, it has allowed me to be approachable. It has allowed me to be human, right? And so a lot of times when you're in leadership, people see you differently and feel like that they can't come up to you and talk to you, and they can't share with you some of the things they're going through. And I think for me, what's really important is that I humanize who I am. Take off the title, take off all of those things. And who am I? I am someone who tries to meet people where they're at. I'm someone who tries to see the good in individuals, regardless, because I do understand that life happens. Life has happened to me. And so I try to take those things that have happened, knowing that, Adam, we hear cliches of leave your problems at the door when you walk into work. And that's a nice slogan to have, but if we're going to be honest here, that's very difficult to do. right? Sometimes we come to work to get away from those things, and sometimes those things follow us. I shared with you at 27, life hit me, right? So at 27, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And when you're 20s, you're taking the world by storm. You're not thinking anything's going to happen to you.
Yeah.
But it knocked me, literally knocked me down to the lowest level I've ever been in my life. But I will say during that experience, I learned so much about who I am and my faith and love. I will say the best dose of medicine for me was the love that I received from coworkers and friends and family. And so I've learned in that state that is the greatest thing that you can give someone is compassion and sympathy and empathy and love. And that has taken me in my leadership. So when I meet people where they are and I share my stories, then they understand, okay, she goes through the same things that we go through. Yeah. And oftentimes I get a knock on my door and they're sharing, I got diagnosed with breast cancer, or I got diagnosed with this type of cancer. But it's because I understand the journey. I understand the journey that they may be going through. And so I feel like everything we go through, every valley that we're in, you find a silver lining. You realize that you were given that cross to bear for a reason. It is not to just go through that journey and not reach back and support someone that may be coming behind you, going through the same thing. And so I think that's what has made me, have such a passion for what I do and the type of leader that I am and being transparent. And I've had mentors that said, "Oh, you share too much," or "Oh, you get too close to the VCs." And I say, I have to be true to who I am first and foremost.
Yeah.
That is what has been my saving grace. And I will continue to be that type of leader. And I will continue to be one that has an open door and an open policy of coming in and being your transparent and authentic self.
Yeah. If that's your main feedback area of opportunity, is that you have a tendency to get too close to your people and that they trust you and like you too much, that's a good problem to have, in my opinion. But we think the same way, I think, on some of this stuff.
I think we do.
When you first got that diagnosis at that young age, like you said, kind of at the bulletproof age, we all feel bulletproof in our 20s. You just feel like you're going to live forever. You feel, you could do anything to yourself and you feel like you can bounce back. How long did it take you to get, you said love and compassion and all of that, and the fact that you found silver linings and empathy grew, what was the length of time that it took you? I'm just curious, right?
So ironically, I was diagnosed on October 31st, so Halloween of 2001.
Wow.
I did 9 months of chemotherapy.
Wow.
And so between 9 months of chemotherapy, I did not have to do any radiation, but I will say that during those 9 months, it's hard for people to understand when I say this. During those 9 months, if you were to look at me, you would think, "Oh my goodness, poor Kathy." But to me, that was the best 9 months, only because I surrendered to, this is what I'm going through. And I didn't make any excuses. I didn't say, why me? I didn't feel sorry for myself. And I relied heavily on working with some amazing doctors. And I say to you, my faith is very important to me. And I relied heavily on those things. And just through that journey, that really molded me. And I know that that science and books will say that 0 to 5 is really what molds you into the person that you're going to be. But you can change in any given point of your life. You just have to be willing to do that. And for me, that was a life-changing experience, to where I wanted to live life and I wanted to just, take life by the storm. And I didn't want to be afraid to do anything. And prior to going through that, I used to talk myself out of doing things, Adam. I let every insecurity that I had boil up in my head and tell me that I couldn't do it. But going through that process, I said, I'm not going to allow any excuse, not going to allow any voices to tell me that I'm not good enough or I cannot do it. So that really put some fire in my belly. that when I got better, I wasn't afraid to walk through any door that was open in terms of opportunity. And I didn't allow myself to say, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not this, you're not that. And comparison kills. And I realized that. And through that whole process, that comparison will kill. And so I removed that out of the way. And every door that opened, every opportunity that opened, that was right for me, I went through that door. And I think that without going through that, I would have still probably been in that cycle of just, talking myself out of things, or as I like to say, becoming your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
But that really, really changed the trajectory of who I was as a person and how I looked at things.
So, Kathy, that's massively inspiring. The fact that you were able to, first of all, overcome it, and then to say, that you got so much strengthening components out of it that you've been able to leverage and basically unleash what you knew you were maybe what you knew you were capable of. But that's our problem, right? We do
Right.
get in our own head. We are our own worst enemy, critic, that judge piece. So it's just really interesting to hear you kind of talk about literally going through that and taking that positive outcome. So talk a little more about, how do you use that now today? So it's years some later, and
Right.
does it, because I think that feels like that's something that I'm sure coming out of the gate, it's amazingly inspirational, and every day is a gift and all of that. But as years go by, do you feel like you still can tune into it, or like how do you use it now in a day-to-day when, like you said, you're trying to be the inspiring person to others for them to seize the moment, seize the day, unleash what they're capable of?
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When you first are going through something like that, you have all this passion and fire, and you want to conquer the world. And then you get into this routine, right? And so I got into that same routine where at times I would continue to have those same thoughts and really battling towards just life and finding, where do I find time for myself? When I got married, had my bonus son and all of that, and you begin to try to navigate, and as I call it, you're juggling elephants. And so for me, I think what happens that I had to find time to just, some people get up early in the morning, exercise. I get up early in the morning and I motivate, and I spend time in devotion and just really, humbling myself and connecting with God. And that, if I start my day like that, I have really, really, really good days. If I start my day without that, then I often find myself trying to get my footing. You understand what I'm saying? And so I think for me, you have to have reassurance. You constantly have to, it's like exercising. You can't stop. You may not do it 5 times a day like you did when you first started out, but you get into a routine and a rhythm where you have affirmations, whatever works for you, where you journal, where you read, you work out, some people run, whatever that is that connects you to your inner self and allows you to continue to grow. Surround yourself around people, surround yourself around networking groups like Crew. I would have to say that Crew has been a saving grace for me to be able to come into a networking group like Crew, being around peers from all different industries, and then even senior leadership that you may not have an opportunity to connect with in your own company, and to be able to just talk openly about the struggles and about the things we're going through, and there's no judgment. And everybody's meeting you where you are and encouraging you. Those are the type of things that help you continue along this journey called life. And not only does it pour into your career, but it pours into your personal life, because they're both parallel. And sometimes they intersect and they go hand in hand. So I've been very fortunate to surround myself around amazing people who have held me accountable because I asked for accountability, who has given me feedback, given me constructive feedback. And those are things that I take and I digest. Sometimes it's hard to digest some of it, but at the end of the day, it's what's good for you. And it's not going to happen overnight. You own the responsibility of putting in the work. Yeah. Nobody's going to put in the work. So unless you put in the work, you're not going to see any change. You're not going to see anything become different in your life. We all have the choice of free will. We all have the choice of free will. And
Yeah.
so I would just say surrounding myself around amazing people, family, friends, peers, leaders, networking groups, all of those things have made me be better.
Yeah. It's first of all, gives me chills for you to say that you mention crew as a part of your regimen that you use, right? To stay so focused and so centered and so positive and all of that. That's what we hope it can be for all of us. And it's nice to hear that you feel that connection. And, I just think about, the human connection piece that you're alluding to. I just don't think we talk about that enough, right? I mean, obviously post-pandemic, and then in the world now where we're going to be staring at our phone probably even 3 times as much because of all the unbelievable enhancements that AI is promising us. When you think about things like being motivated, being positive, being centered, being inspired, that's going to come from connection from human beings. And unfortunately today, that was something that for most of generations, that was a natural thing you could probably walk yourself into each day, but today, depending on your work dynamic, your personal dynamic, how much time you spend on technology, you literally have to build that into your regimentation, into your accountability forum, right? You have to, like your morning routine, like your faith exercise, like your physical exercise. I mean, connection with people. It's like, we actually have to put it on our list.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
And I think if we do, there's so much positive outcome that we can have around these things that maybe we would only normally be reflective about or conscious about when we're going through really difficult times. Right. But when you're constantly connecting with humans, the reality is that I find, Kathy, you tell me if I'm wrong, is we're always all going through something, right? So it's like you had a moment at 27 that was a massive epiphany for you because of what you had to endure and go through. Well, there's someone right now in our network right now that's going through that exact type of thing or something similar, right?
Right.
And what's interesting about it is when you allow people in to talk about that, and when you're around people and you're opening up and asking them about what's going on, you get to be a part of that with them. And so while you get to support them, but you also get to get that back for yourself. You give that to me this morning, telling me your story, right? All the shit I'm kind of thinking about, that I'm stressing about, it's irrelevant in the scheme of what you, Kathy, survived and went through at 27. And there's examples like that all around us in our daily routine. And to me, that's one of the biggest powers of connection and stuff, and why you have to stay on the human side of connection and not just on the transactional, operational, tactical side, especially when we're in our work setting.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I know I got a soapbox on that, but you're opening up a door for me that's really, I'm just trying to think, how do we get more folks, even more conscious about this because of the potential benefits. Now, you had also shared to me recently that, so you overcome this at 27 and you have all these years of being positive and being motivated and staying out of your own way and inspiring others through that overcoming moment that you had. Yeah. And then you recently had another door kind of shut on you, or create another wave of adversity came at you. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I think like so many people going through the pandemic, everything was on the back burner. You couldn't get your physical checkups. Every doctor and nurse was hands-on with saving lives. And so as we begin to come out of the pandemic and this new normal that we're all living in, I went back into getting all of my checkups, and it was the first time that I was to get my colonoscopy. And so I go in to get my colonoscopy thinking that everything's okay, but always in the back of your head, if you're a survivor of any type of medical, or if you've ever been through anything, that thing always is like a stalker. You feel like you try to move on, but it's still that little nagging voice in the back of your head. And so I go in and I really am not thinking anything. And so when you wake up, any of those who had a colonoscopy, when you wake up, they tell you right then what they've seen and all of that. And so my doctor says, oh, we saw something that, was a little concerning and we couldn't remove it, but we're going to have to schedule, outpatient surgery. And in that moment, I felt the same gut feeling that I felt when I was 27. It was familiar. And I knew this doesn't feel right. But I tried to just stay motivated and positive, and so had the surgery. And I one of the hardest procedures I've ever had in my life. The recovery was really, really hard. And the pathology report comes back that says that I had cancer. And it was early. So it was stage 1A, which means that it's extremely early. But still to hear that there was cancer found somewhere else in my body was just so alarming. I'm like, God, like, really? I dealt with this at 27, and now at 48, I'm dealing with that again. And so it was a punch in the gut, like really getting up every morning and reaffirming myself and saying everything's okay and praying. And so I had that procedure, and had to go back 2 weeks later for the MRI and all the other scans to see what are the next steps. And so the doctor said it may be chemo, maybe radiation, and all of this. So I go in only to be told that the surgery removed everything. There was nothing else there. And what I have to do going forward is every 3 months have a check, have a colonoscopy. And I walked out of there with the same feeling of gratefulness, of gratitude. I think the trees look brighter and the wind feels better, and all the things that you ignore on a daily basis, your eyes open up and you see things differently. And in that moment, it was an awakening, that same awakening that I had at the age of 27. Same awakening that says, live life to the fullest. It was a rebirth of that. And now I tell everyone, have you had your colonoscopy? Why not? Go get your colonoscopy. And I share my story. And I have to tell you, I've had many friends and family and even coworkers that have ran out to get their colonoscopy because I am one of the statistics that you hear on the colon commercials. Yeah. Every 4 out of 10 people. Well, I'm that 4. And now you can put a name and a face with it. And it's different when you can put a name and a face with it. And I think as we share more of that, it will encourage individuals to go out and take care of their health. Had I not did that, this would be a different conversation. But because I was diligent enough to go and get my test done, we were able to catch it early. And so it still threw me for a loop, right? Because I thought I was over that. And it just opened up a series of things. And, I even shared with you that in the midst of that, my mom had to come and live with me because she needed to get knee replacement surgery. So you talk about juggling elephants. There I was again, juggling elephants. Yep. And I hadn't shared that with my 79-year-old mother because I didn't want her to have any setbacks, worrying about her child. I know as a parent, no matter how old you get, you have to be kind of careful when you share things with your elderly parents. Yeah. And so I kept that amongst me and my siblings. And I'm glad I did. Because I would have worried my mom for no reason, because I'm on the other side of that and being diligent. I did share with her later, but I'm better. I'm doing good, thank God. My mom is doing well. She's moving through her therapy really well. But it's all about the process, Adam. It is the silver lining. What did I learn from that? What do I take away from that? What do I share? And it has been, again, like I said, reigniting that passion and that fire that I had before.
It's I can't even imagine the feeling that you must have had again, 20 years later, having beaten that to get that again. And to hear you, how quickly, because I know this is fairly recent, how quickly you are authentically in the gift and opportunity mindset around it. Again, I know I keep telling you, but I just don't know if you realize how inspiring it is to watch someone go through things like this and operate the way you have, and then pay that forward. You know, it's truly admirable. And I'm so happy that you're on the good side, like you said, right? Of getting through it. And, when you talk about, so going through these things, how did that impact just showing up at work? The reality is, I mean, you still had to work through this, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I worked through it. I had an amazing support system. My leader shared it with him. And he was amazing. He said, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Do whatever you need to take care of your mother. I think for me, it was an escape. And I've often heard individuals say, I come to work to just get an escape. And I never really experienced that, because I would always kind of take the things with me. But for me, when I came here, I can focus on being a leader and work, and kind of put all of that in the back burner until the phone rings. You have dun, 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 or your doctor is calling you, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is it? Here's life happening again. But for me, I've been able to compartmentalize a lot of that when I could. Now, sometimes it reared its ugly head, and it stayed in the forefront of my mind, especially when you're waiting for test results. It's almost like you can't really get into a rhythm. Like, that thing is just really outstanding. You really want to find out what are the next steps. But for me, this time around, work was a saving grace for me. It allowed me to escape. It allowed me to come in. And maybe it's because I was in a different space now. I'm a leader. At 27, I was an individual contributor, right? But as a leader, you have to navigate things differently. You have to show up at the front line, and you have to be ready. And whatever you're dealing with, you're going to have to be able to compartmentalize that so it doesn't impact the individuals around you, right? And so I think we have a responsibility as leaders to be able to do that. And that was the saving grace here, is that I had to show up, and I had to be present. And that was the difference.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear you draw that connection, because so often we'll hear experts and folks say that, one of the best things you can do for yourself is focus on others, and that there's therapeutic elements in that. Yeah. And it sounds like because of being in leadership and going through round 2 of cancer, you actually felt that and experienced that. There was a therapeutic element of not being mentally consumed, rightfully so, also, right, by the heaviness that was around you, and spending a certain amount of hours every day focused on other people, helping other people, right, supporting other people. And it's actually the self-reinforcing thing is it helped you through the thing you had to get through. And that's a privilege. That's a gift that leaders have, right? There's a lot of crap leaders have to deal with, because all this stuff bubbles up when and all the people issues if it's under you, it's your responsibility too. But the positive is there's a real human, right, daily example of that is your gift. When you tune into that, you have that opportunity every day. And that's not just a gift to the person on the end receiving side. It's a gift to you back. And it's interesting to hear, even in the heaviest of times, how that can be a gift. Yeah. So Kathy, this has been such, I think, look, I could talk with you about this stuff all day, to be honest, right? Because it's good for the soul, and it's obviously become happy endings that you're going to continue to pay forward. If you were to bake this down, though, and just think about what, at this point in your life, surviving 2 rounds of cancer, and everything that you've had to navigate, what's just your biggest piece of advice for people in their careers and in their lives? What's kind of the core ethos you want to share?
Yeah, good question. Great question. I would say, life is going to present peaks, and life is going to present valleys. And a lot of times when we're in the valley, we don't take the time to slow down and learn the lesson. Because there's a lesson to be learned in the valley. The same way there's a lesson to be learned when we're on the rooftop celebrating. Learn to just slow down and stop and learn the lesson. What am I supposed to take from this? And how do I apply it to my life to be a better person? And I think if we continue to do that, like you said, that human connection, the willingness and doing the work to become a better version of who you are, that is how we can change the world. That is how we can change the impact on the world. And so I would just say, life is going to happen. It is. There's nothing we can do to avoid those things. There's no amount of money you can have, no amount of your background, your race, your creed. None of that matters. We're all going to have to go through this thing called life. But when we go through it, what do we take away from it? It's your perspective. And I think you talk about this a lot, Adam. It's your perspective on the thing that you're going through. And how do you look at it and how do you navigate through that? And take the opportunity to just become a better you. That would be the best advice that I could give.
Yeah. It's awesome, Kathy. It is. It really is. I mean, you're inspiring. I honestly don't even have any words to follow up with that because I think it was so well said. So, thank you for sharing all this stuff. Thank you for opening up.
Welcome.
And thank you for, again, being such an inspiration to us at Cru and to me personally. And I'm sure to everybody that has the privilege of working around you and to all those family members as well. Right. So,
right.
Good stuff. Thank you for taking the time and have a great rest of your day.
You too, Adam. And thank you. It's been great speaking with you as always.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Cru Conversations. These conversations are for leaders, between leaders, and by leaders to inspire you to grow into the type of leader you want to become.